Okay, we should be live. Let me double check on the YouTube channel. Leo's just disappeared. I think he just fell asleep. All right, my
Is he
channel.
traveling?
What's up?
Is he traveling around or something?
No, I don't think so. All right, let me make sure that create go live. There we go. Okay, live now. Yeah, we're live. Cool. Let me get the link.
Is he traveling?
What's that?
Is he traveling?
Who's traveling? Oh wait, that was the echo from the delayed stream. My bad. We are live. Hold on, let me tweet this out. We are live again with at Ken and at Eric to talk about the last polls, what some of these results can mean, and now what? On YouTube, please retweet on your accounts. Thank you. Cool, guys. So welcome to the live stream. We have one viewer so far. We'll get more in a sec. Ken, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Are you exciting time for you to come back to Bangkok?
Very exciting time, and very, from the looks of the final polls, we're getting some pretty unexpected results too.
Some very unexpected results. Let's dive into that. So a lot of people were assuming that Bangkok would be a battleground between Prayut and Move Forward and maybe like the Democrats, but it just seems like they just got, judging from the early, not exit polls, but the last polls before elections, it might be a completely orange Bangkok, which would be crazy, right?
Right, and it would be a crazy swing from 2019 as well, because in 2019 we know that Future Forward got the most seats. Oh, not the most seats, sorry, but they got the biggest share of the vote. But still, Palang Pracharat got, quite a few number of seats. And this time we're not seeing any of the conservative parties. It appears they might not get anything at all in the capital. And it's for, the capital city, which used to be the conservative, a Democrat stronghold. It's quite a big turnaround, quite a big swing.
Yeah. What do you think that says about the demographic? Is it a demographic shift? Is it like a shift towards younger voters, or do you think it's like a cross section of everything, where everyone's sort of just sick of military rule?
I mean, I would think it's a cross section of everything, but like something that I find interesting that I've been thinking about lately is the intersection between the old Democrat vote and the current Move Forward vote, because we tend to think of like Pheu and Move Forward as being on the same side, right?
Yeah.
And that people don't really switch sides. But I think that in a way, Move Forward has followed in some ways the same footsteps as Democrats, in presenting a a clean, strong party brand that disaffected Democrat voters can relate to. And, if you don't want to vote for, a gruff Mercurial general like Prayut, you can switch to Democrats to Move Forward.
So what you're saying is that Pita is basically a Pisa 2.0.
I mean, in a way, right? Like
Yeah.
he's this, Western educated, young, good looking politician who's, cut from a different cloth than everybody else.
And do you think like, but I mean, hopefully they don't go the same way as the Democrats did from 2006 to 2014. Eric, I mean, you're more tapped into the local, like the Northeast mindset than I am, because of your family connections and things like that. Do you think people are shifting from Prayut to Move Forward up there?
No.
No, you still think like once the votes would come
predominantly Prayut up there.
Yeah, and do you think Bhumjaithai is making ground up there as well?
In that term, then there will be like neck and neck. Well, Bhumjaithai is always there for Isan Thai, right? So I mean, they're not going to gain ground from that. But Prayut, yeah, they might be losing some vote to MFP, obviously, because of the young voters, but predominantly it's still Prayut. Anyone you talk to is Prayut.
And do you think up in the north that's the same thing? Like it's still mostly Prayut?
Well, you can see in Chiang Mai, there's a lot of phenomenon up there that we didn't see for a long time with MFP. Quite doing well in Chiang Mai, which is a major city up there, and on the other places, they also gain entrances to places that we didn't expect it. So I think they in the north there might be some quite, let's say, colorful battering ground up there. In the northeast, I would say still with Prayut. I would be surprised if MFP won a lot there. But in Bangkok, I mean, we also see MFP is gaining a lot of ground there too, and then it's important. There's 33 district there, and if they get a lot there, it would be good for them.
I think also, Ken, from what you said, it's really interesting that PPRP is losing a lot of ground inside Bangkok. But do you see the same thing happening in the south as well, which is more of a Democrat PPRP stronghold? Do you think MFP is gaining ground there as well?
No. Well, Ken, go ahead. I don't see it. I don't think Ken.
I'm not so interested in the PPRP this time around, and more with UTN, right, with United Thai Nation, because I don't think that the General Prayut or Palang Pracharath brand would work necessarily in Bangkok or in the south. But I think that when we did see that when Prayut went to the south, his brand is still working in the south. Massive rallies, a lot of people coming out to see him. In a way, he's like, he's taken over the affection of the Southerners for the Democrats. But I mean, early returns still, we'll have to see whether or not Democrats can hold on to the South, whether or not Prayut actually will make those inroads. But I think the biggest struggle for Prayut would be, if he's going to win, clearly he hasn't won. He's probably not going to win any seats in Bangkok. He's probably going to struggle in the rest of the country. If the South is his only stronghold, that's probably not enough to launch him for a third term as prime minister.
So this third term that we've been talking about. Well, I mean, he might get nominated, right? But it's going to be hard to find that coalition that would support him. I think that the major thing here is that, I mean, there's a couple major headlines that we can talk about. The first one, obviously, is something, Ken, that you just touched on, which is that the Democrats are done. It's just, they're done as a party. They're done in Bangkok. If they get some in the south, that would be great. But in terms of party list, do you see them making a splash at all? I think the most optimistic poll I saw ahead of the election was that the Democrats were going to get 40. I think that's going to be a stretch for them now. I mean, would you disagree, or what do you stand there?
Yeah, I don't think the Democrats are going to do well on the party list. And I think that if you look at the Democrat Party list, the interesting thing is that, because they use a seniority system, and their top party list is Jurin, and then Kun Chuan, former leader, Kun Banyat, former leader, Kun Yin Kalaya, a senior big in the party. If they only win about 5 or 6 party list seats, you're going to have all these grandees in the party that they aren't the future of the party. They're not the people who are going to be making speeches in parliament and helping to regain votes. So in a way, the Democrats, even if they win a few party list seats, they're going to struggle to make a splash and recover at all in the next parliament.
What do you think, Eric? Do you think the Democrats are done?
I hope they are not. I mean, there's sure a lot of good people in there. It's just that, in the South, if they lose that stronghold, it will be really bad for them. In Bangkok, I think that they're gone from Bangkok at this point. But in the South, they're still there, but they would need a lot of sway to get other people or join other people. They would need more. They would need more stronghold than just the South. If you get what I'm saying.
I mean, I'm not.
I'll say something.
Please go ahead. Please.
I was just going to make a comment about how the Democrats closed their campaign, because their last big rally in Bangkok, the slogan they used was "Save Pracharath, save the Democrats." Right? I think that's how you know that their internal polling was really showing some really dire results for them. And the most interesting thing about the final rally is that they had Jurin make the first speech, and then they had Apisit close the rally. Usually at a rally, you would have the party leader close the rally, but here, because he should be the star attraction, the big draw. But here, when you had Apisit close the rally, and even he said during his speech that he's never in his political life, he's never had a rally where someone who's not even running for office closes a rally. So maybe that foreshadows something in the future about how the Democrats need to go if they know that their only, their big star is still opposite, and Jirin is probably at this point not going to have a he's probably not going to continue as party leader if the results hold.
I mean, let me finish that for you. Judging from all my friends who are in the Democrats and people who have talked to us from the Democrat Party off record, behind the scenes, what have you, everyone has agreed that Jirin's leadership of this party over the last, let's say, 4 years has been disastrous. And Apisit might be a tainted brand in terms of the majority of the population and greater Thailand or Thailand at large. But in terms of the party base itself, he still has a lot of traction. I don't think Jirin has that traction, and we're going to see that with the results of this election. The other interesting thing that we should note for our audiences and our viewers on the videos that we cut together from this is that this might also be the end of Prayut, right? Because if he doesn't get enough traction to form a yeah, we're all doing that in our heads. If Prayut doesn't get enough traction to form a coalition, he's not an MP candidate. He's not going to be in parliament. If he's not prime minister, he's done. He's out. He's gone. So
he said it himself. He's going to be gone if he didn't get enough.
So if I'm Prayut, I'm either, there's two ways I can go about this. I can either fade gracefully away if I can't form a coalition or a minority government, or I do something behind the scenes and there's some heavy machinations or there's some dissolution or some extrajudicial stuff that might happen that we see happen, or some judiciary stuff that we see happen. What are the chances of that? Is that something that we should be afraid of, or do you think it's still too soon to make a call either way?
So I think I would look at this in stages, right? So stage one, does United Thai Nation Party get 25 seats? Because constitutionally, you need at least 25 seats even to nominate Prayut as prime minister. I think that they're probably going to clear the bar, but it's not guaranteed based on, the early returns. Secondly, even if Prayut gets 25 seats and he can't be nominated for prime minister, I think there's a high chance that he's not going to be the biggest party from the current government coalition that's in parliament. So I think there's a big chance that Bhumjaithai might be a bigger party, for example, or perhaps even Palang Pracharat with their local strongholds might still get more seats than Prayut. And if that happens, I think if Prayut tries to form a coalition, the question that Anutin and Prayut are going to ask is, well, why you, right? Why would someone who's not the leader of the biggest party in parliament, not even the leader of the biggest party in the current coalition, why would you have the right to be the next prime minister? So that's two pretty high bars that Prayut has to jump over first. And in the event that he doesn't even get the most seats from the current coalition, I don't know if he would have enough support, in the establishment to even try to hold on. And we could potentially see a backroom meeting that leads to someone else, another conservative, become prime minister.
My other thing is, like you mentioned, it's not a guarantee that he's going to get 25 seats to be nominated as prime minister. My hope as someone who's pro-democracy is that not only does he not clear that 25 seats, but there's a chance that PPRP also doesn't clear the 25 seats, although it's probably going to be easier for them with the MPs that Tamanat brings in from, like, constituency wise up in the northeast, right? But if neither party clears 25 seats, that means the entire Senate is up for play. That means the Senate's not allied to either Prayut or Prayut, and then they can vote their conscience. Because if, let's say, Prayut doesn't clear 25 seats and Prayut does, then I fear that 200 senators are going to vote for whoever survives that gauntlet. That's a concern for sure, because that was the problem in the last election, and it's still going to be a problem in this election. It's still rigged. In terms of BJT, what are the early results and polling results that you're seeing? What were the pre-election polls that you see in terms of how many seats they got?
I think Bhumjaithai has been a little, all over the place.
I saw anything from like 40 to 80, so it's in that ballpark.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we said we weren't going to look at the early returns because it's only only 3% has been counted. But right now, if you go by such early returns, they have about 50 seats.
I mean, 50 is not great, but they could eventually end up kingmaker, especially if move
Yeah.
forward plus PT doesn't get to that 375 threshold. They need to nullify the Senate, right?
And also the important thing for Anutin is that he's current, from the current coalition, he's the biggest party right now.
Yeah, which is saying something about the current coalition. My it's just weird for me because this is the guy that basically ran our healthcare into the ground during COVID, and he might get rewarded for it. And we'll see how that goes. But it's just
What
a
if
weird.
Yeah.
No,
What I find interesting about Bhumjaithai is that they've been running on their slogan "Put Lao Tham," right? We talked about it and then they actually did it. But then it turns out the thing they did, which was marijuana legalization for health purposes, for healthcare purposes, wasn't at, it wasn't exactly popular across the board. There's been a lot of blowback from so I've heard especially in the Northeast where people are concerned about drugs and about misinterpreting this as Anutin supporting legalization of marijuana in general, which he says he's not. And so the fact that even with this blowback, he's probably still going to do better than Prayut or Prayut. It's quite astounding.
well, I mean, he only screwed up the health side of things. Those other two guys screwed up the the governance, the economy, everything else that's gone on. What's going on Twitter, Eric? Anything interesting happening?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
We're at 3%, like Ken said, and again, yeah, Prayut is up there. Bhumjaithai is up there as well.
Ken, you had a lot of interesting observations before the elections. One of the key things that you said that might be interesting is the demographic shift in how in the way Thailand's going. Do you want to comment on that? Like, what does this trend mean for the future? And do you think because like if we compare this, and you're a political science major, so you can do comparative politics for me here. But if we compare this to to the UK and to the United States and countries in the West, the youth vote is generally not something that people can rely on. They're notoriously fickle. Mostly it's older people who come out to polls and vote. But in Thailand, it seems to be the opposite trend. And do you think this is something that can be sustained and continued? And what is necessary for move forward to keep this up?
It's interesting because so just before I got back to Bangkok, I was doing some election field work in northern Thailand, and I got to talk to a Palang Pracharath MP, and he said something to the effect of he doesn't think move forward is they're not going to win this election, but if they stay in opposition for the next 4 years, in 4 years they're going to be really scary. That's when they could potentially sweep. And now looking back at that prediction, move forward, they could sweep this time. They could perhaps end up at, well, it's too early to tell, but they're overperforming expectations so far, and so in a way, I feel like the demographic tsunami has already arrived. But we're already seeing the effect of of youth turnout, of a generational shift, a generational divide. That's where I think there was a Thai data points piece from 2019 that showed that the younger generation were almost uniformly pro future forward. And this time around, I don't think Move Forward has lost votes. Whether or not they're going to be able to keep that, I think very much depends on how they perform in the upcoming parliament. But so far, things are not looking good for the conservative parties, as I still don't see how, I still don't see a strategy that they've come up with to win the youth back, to, to try to get back any of the votes that they've lost.
I think also, I mean, like you said, I think the demographic shift is here, and young voters are making themselves heard now. But my worry is that Move Forward gets a mandate with Prayut in some fraction or some ratio of that, and if that happens, great. And then they go into Parliament for 4 years, and you know what? They do a decent job, not excellent, not bad, but youth people like. Is there still a measure of that fickleness among youth voters? Do you think that'll rear its head, where in like 4 years they're like, the democracy's already win, I don't need to vote again? That might be a worry for me. going forward. Of course, there's no way to tell, but it's something to think about, I think.
I feel like, again, I would draw the comparison back to the Democrats, right? When they were the party of the new generation back in the 1990s. And, in a way, I think the Democrats held on to that vote for a very long time. They held on to, the enduring loyalty that, say, Bangkok middle class voters, younger voters in the 90s gave them up until 2019 when they finally lost that vote to Prayut. So I wouldn't I don't I think that Jeff's move forward might actually, not retain all the support that they have now if they do get a mandate and they, have to actually govern, actually face, the challenges of governing. But in the end, I still think that this generation, after having been raised under 8 years with Prayut, there's a good chance they're probably going to stick with move forward, just like, 1990s voters stuck with the Democrats.
What do you think, Eric?
Some update first, I think.
Give us some updates.
The ECT system, 4% or 1.1 million counted. Prayut is leading 79, Bhumjaithai 55, and then Gaogai 53. These are number of seats in terms of constituency. So yeah, Prayut, Bhumjaithai, Gaogai. But if you go to vote 62, which is Silver Group counting it, this one already went to 2.3 million counted, so double that. And they put Gaogai at 160 with 119 at constituency, followed by Prayut and Bhumjaithai.
160.
Yeah, for Gaogai. So there's quite a difference there. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, the only thing that coincides between the two is Gaogai, Prayut, Bhumjaithai is up there.
Yeah, and that's what, those were most predictions before the election as well, that those would be the three constituency kings. Democrats maybe two in the South, but I guess they're not reporting just yet.
How much did Romthai Sangchad get on the vote 62
Romthai
website?
Sangchad for the vote 62, they got 41, 26 for constituency. They came fourth, and Palang Pracharat also at 38. Followed by that, so they're right behind at 4 and 5.
And the Democrats?
Yeah, they're after that as well.
They're not even in that list.
They're here. They're number 6. They're after the military.
Okay, so it's going to be hard for Prayut to form a coalition then.
Yeah.
I think if Prayut and Move Forward get together and they agree to work together, which is not a guarantee, right? There's no guarantee that Prayut decides to move forward given everything that we've heard before the election. But if they do decide to if they get above 350 together and they work together, it's going to be really hard to justify a minority government. It would look so bad. There would be so much upheaval and upset people. I don't think they can do it. It'd be too nadana. So we'll see how that goes.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, though. Do you think that Prayut Move Forward can form a coalition?
Well, they said they're going to talk at 10, so I don't know what's going to go on in that conversation. but having talked to Prayut, their goal was always to get their landslide and just govern by themselves or with a smaller party. They've been apprehensive about going together with MFP because I think there's a couple things in play. The first being Thaksin coming back and whether that jeopardizes that. And the second thing being whether conservative establishment would appreciate them joining with MFP given their stances. So I think for them to work together, MFP might have to blunt the edge of some of their 112 rhetoric. And if I'm MFP, I don't know if I would do that actually, because it's something that's a strong issue with their voters, and to sort of step back on that, they might go the way of like if from my world political recollection, they might go the way of the Lib Dems in the UK when they joined with the Tories and then really ruined their brand. So I don't know if MFP does that. We have some questions from the audience. Nick Metulski asks, what's the chance of another coup if elections doesn't go well for Prayut? Ken, you take that first. I'll take it second.
This is going to be a cop-out answer, I'm gonna say it's too early to tell, but I will say that I feel like the chances of a coup, I think if you look back at previous coups, right, in 2006 and in 2014, none of them really occurred right in the aftermath of an election. So 2006 occurred in, during Thaksin's second term. So he's already ruled for 4 years, 5 years. In 2014, it occurred in the middle of the Ying government. And that was only after the amnesty bill had been, they tried to ram through the amnesty bill in parliament. Obviously that didn't happen, but it precipitated the coup. And I think that given that trend, I don't think the military would launch a coup even if Pheu forms a government, because there's no real justification for it quite yet. I think they would have to wait for a trigger point. And I don't know if Pheu is going to provide that trigger point this time.
Yeah, and that trigger point could be a myriad of things. The comment from the audience after that was, "Ken, how could you cop out like that?" I don't think it was a cop out. I thought he answered it quite well. I would add this though. I would say that Prayut is not the only one that is powerful in the military, and his is but one faction of the military. There are other factions of the military who would very much not like to be dragged into it again. And then there are other branches of military who might launch a coup, but it's not to install Prayut, for sure. So there's a couple factors at play in terms of where coups are going to go. I would also say that given everything that's happened and given how badly the sentiment against the military has gone over the last 10 years, they are going to tread really carefully and think really carefully for launching a coup. Because a coup, I can guarantee you, automatically means widespread protests, the likes of which we probably have never seen when it comes to a coup. So there's that. And also, coups are not necessarily successful. We've had, 13 successful ones, but there's been a couple unsuccessful ones as well. And when it's unsuccessful, the people that carried out the coup face repercussions. So there's that. There's some hope, guys. Not everything is bleak. Today's a joyful day. Any updates there, Eric, from Twitter?
No, just update what I already said pretty much.
Okay. Guys, we're going to take a quick bio break. We're going to be back in about, let's say, 10 minutes. And then we'll get restarted on the second part of the poll and the second part of the stream. So I will, guys, I'll resend you a Zoom link in a second. I'm also taking this break because we're about to run out of time on Zoom and I didn't pay for it. So since we're using the free version, we're going to do a quick stream intermission. We'll be back in about 15 minutes. Or not 15, sorry, in about 5 to 10 minutes. Thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott.
Yo, Chuck, what's the move, man? I was on my way up here to the studio, you know what I'm saying? And this brother stopped me and asked me, yo, what's up with that brother Chucky D?
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to use my Michigan Zoom room, like a premium room? Yeah. I'll send one to you so that you don't have to like cut the. Okay.
He swear he nice. I said, yo, the brother don't swear he nice. He knows he's nice, you know what I'm saying? So, Chuck, I got a feeling you turning into a public enemy, man. Now, remember that line you was kicking to me on the way out to L.A. Lounge in Queens while we was in the car on the way to the shop? Well, yo, right now, kick the bass for them brothers and let them know what goes on.
Rolling stones of the rap game, not bragging. Lips bigger than Jagger, not sagging. Spell it backwards, I'ma leave it at that. That ain't got nothing to do with rap. Check the facts, expose those cats who pose as heroes, take advantage of blacks. Your government's gangsters, so cut the crap. A war going on, so where y'all at? Fight for power, cause great responsibility. F the police, but who's stopping you from killing me? Disasters, fiascos, or loop by PE. If it's I instead of we believe in TV. Spitting rich and bitches, it's new thing about snitches. Watch the masses move as the masses switches. System distant, but barely missed her. My soul intention to save my brothers and sisters. Get up.
Just like that.
Get up.
Just like that.
Get up.
gotta do. You got to tell them just like that. You know what I'm saying? Cause yo, man, let me tell you a little something, man. These brothers running around, hard-headed, they get a little jealous, you know what I'm saying? Just like that. You know, they try to bring you down with them. But yo, Chuck, you got to tell them just like that.
Screaming gangster 20 years later. Of course, endorse while conscience is faded. New generations believe in them fables. Gangster boogie on 2 turntables. So no love, so it's easy to hate it. Desecrated while the coroner waited. Any given Sunday, so where y'all rated? With slavery lynching and them drugs infiltrated. I'm like that doll Chucky, baby. Keep coming back to live love life like I'm crazy. Keep it moving, rising to the top. Duck fresh, clean living, you don't stop. Revolution means change, don't look at me strange. So I can't repeat what other rappers be saying. If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. Harder than you think is a beautiful thing. Get up!
Just like that.
Get up!
Just like that.
Get up!
Just like that.
Get up!
Just like that. Yeah, that's right, Chuck, man. That's what you gotta do. You got to tell them just like that. You know what I'm saying? Cause yo, man, let me tell you a little something, man. These brothers running around, hard-headed, they get a little jealous, you know what I'm saying? Just like that. You know, they try to bring you down with them. But yo, Chuck, you got to tell them just like that.
So it's time to leave you a preview, so you too can review what we do. 20 years in this business, how you sell soul, gee whiz. People bear witness. Thank you for letting us be ourselves. So don't mind me if I repeat myself. These simple lines be good for your health, to keep them crime rhymes on the shelf. Live love life like you just don't care. 5,000 leaders never scared. Bring the noise, it's the moment they feared. Get up, still a beautiful idea. Get up, throw your hands in the air. Get up, and show no fear. Get up if y'all really care.
The Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating. But you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fears I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave. Take a look around you, boy. It's bound to scare you, boy. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Yeah, my blood's so mad, feels like coagulating. I'm sitting here just contemplating. I can't twist the truth, it knows no regulation. Handful of senators don't pass legislation, and marches alone can't bring integration. When human respect is disintegrating, this whole crazy world is just too frustrating. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Think of all the hate there is in Red China, then take a look around to Selma, Alabama. You may leave here for 4 days in space, but when you return, it's the same old place. The pounding of the drums, the pride and disgrace. You can bury your dead, but don't leave a trace. Hate your next door neighbor, but don't forget to say grace. And tell me
I'm willing
We're
to
on
poll.
the eve of destruction.
Who do you think will be in the next PM? That's well, guys. Eric's gonna come back onto Zoom in a second. Keep the questions coming. We will answer them in the order that we receive them. Thank you for joining us. What a crazy day of elections. 2 questions that's in the stream now. Who do you think will be in the next PM? Mohammed Akil says Seta Tawisin maybe the possible candidate for PM. Thai Senate probably don't like Pat Hong Tan as she's daughter of Thaksin. Not a bad point. Any chance you could break down the different sources of results? ECT, vote 62, ADT, EB. I will let Eric do that when he gets here. And the positives and negatives of the various sources. We can actually go into the polls and talk about the different polls and why some are more biased than not. But Ken, why don't you take the first one? Who do you think is going to be the next PM?
You're giving me the hard one. Oh, at this point, I think before we saw the pre-election polls, we would probably have said Pita doesn't really stand a chance to become prime minister, right? Simply because his party is not going to be the biggest party in parliament. At this point, very early in the day, we still don't know how things will turn out, but there's now a possibility that Prayut might not actually end up with not even a landslide majority, but even a majority at all in parliament. And so now I think the door is wide open for anybody really to emerge out of the backroom dealing that unfolds. Even if Move Forward does win the most seats, I don't really see a route for Pita to become prime minister, simply because I don't think he's going to be able to get past the Senate. I know a viewer mentioned that Pat Hong Tan isn't acceptable to the Senate. I think even less acceptable to the Senate than Kun Pat Hong Tan is Kun Pita. Simply so
For sure.
Too. So I think that regardless, we're not going to see Pita as prime minister. So the question is then who, right? Perhaps if you don't have a coalition between Prayut and Move Forward, and you end up with, I know it's been denied several times by Prayut leaders, but at some point if they don't have a choice and they need to get through the Senate, the question is, will they do a deal with Prayut to support a Prayut prime minister? It's a possibility. Prayut, he was the chairman of the committee that appointed the senators. He's able to influence them. Will he help drive votes towards a Prayut prime minister? I think it's entirely possible.
Here's my thing. I think there's people in Prayut who know that if they do that and they do a coalition with the PPRP, because it's not feasible for them to join with MFP for whatever reason, whether it's the return of Cont'd or whether it's because there's pressure on them from behind the scenes, right? But if they join with the PPRP, their brand is dead for a lot of people. And that's a risk that they're going to have to balance if that's the case. We don't even know, like, if they do get the PM candidate of choice, would it be Seta or would it be Ing?
Yeah.
Right? That's still something that we don't know as well. If I was Ing, I'd just want to take care of my baby and go on maternity. That's just me. My other big thing here is also like MFP. I mean, we don't know the 4% reporting. We don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But if early indications are correct and MFP have the mandate that they've been given, you would be a fool to not join with that mandate. Like, there's a clear demographic and political shift towards the message that MFP are selling. And to discount it and then go the opposite way of where the political headwinds are shifting to is political. It's weird. I wouldn't say it's political suicide quite yet, but it's not a smart political decision.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
So do you think that that government could actually, get past the Senate?
I think if they get 375, they could. If they can get one more small party, and they go and it's PT, MFP, and God forbid the Democrats or someone else or BJT. I think if the three of them can work together and find a way, they can get past the Senate. But the Senate is a big hurdle. But wait, correct me if I'm wrong though. This is the last time the Senate's in play according to the Constitution, right? So in 4 years, there's no more Senate, and then it's just normal democracy. So guys, there's light at the end of the tunnel, even if we don't reach that light now. But yeah, Ken, you were saying something before I interrupted you.
I think so another question I have is, let's say we have a Move Forward Prayut coalition government, right? And by all likelihood, they're probably not going to get to 376 on their own. They're going to need at least one other, medium-sized, smaller party to join them. So my question now would be, who would that partner potentially be? You could have Bhumjaithai, but I doubt Bhumjaithai would be willing to work with Move Forward just based on the 112 stance alone. The same would apply to Palang Pracharath. The same would apply to Democrats, even to Shat Thai Patana, because Kun Prabut has said very clearly he's not willing to work with anyone who wants to abolish or amend 112.
Yeah, God, we'll really feel sad to see those 4 fucking seats go, but whatever. Actually, they might get more than that, right? Prayut might get a few more than 4, but I think
Prabut could get around maybe 10.
That's optimistic, but here's a question for you. Let's say you're right, and that like if Prayut refused to work with MFP because of the 112 thing, that means that they're gonna have to form a coalition of really disparate parties, and that means you could see potentially a coalition of Prayut, Democrats, Palang Pracharath, Bhumjaithai, all the smaller parties, Chat Phana Kla, Rom Thai Sang Chat, maybe not to RTSG, but Thai Sang Thai, sorry, and you get all these things. Is there a play where they all form a government, and they might get over that 375 mark, and they might even get the Senate, but then you've got MFP as a really major force in the opposition?
If that happens, we're gonna see a Move Forward landslide at the next election.
That's what I think too. So let's say this is what happens, audience, viewers. Prayut says we can't work with Move Forward because Move Forward aren't willing to blunt the edge of their 112 rhetoric. So we're going to form a coalition. Prayut is going to form a coalition with Palang Pracharath, with Bhumjaithai, with Democrats, with everyone else. As voters, how would you take that? And what would you do in the next election in 4 years? Please answer in the chat, because I'm curious to know what you say. There's some more questions coming. Could you see a world where BJT joins a progressive coalition? BJT will join whatever coalition is necessary to keep BJT in power, unless it's the 112 issue, which they won't touch. Next question. Eric, this one's probably for you. Any chance you can break down the different sources of the results? So who is ECT? Who is Vote 62? Who is ADTEB? Who is NIDA poll? Where do they get their information? Can you trust them? Who do they favor, conservative or liberal?
Let's just say there's only 2 worth following at this point, which is the official one, their ECT report. Let me see the address. We'll share that on our Twitter, ectreport.com. They're quite slow, but that's the official unofficial result basically, and they're straight from the EC, so Election Commission. So that's the one that most people will be using. Who is Vote 62? They're a civil group whom have been monitoring elections since the 2019 elections. last time they have been, helping quite a lot in terms of help monitoring the election back way back then until now. So they have a lot more volunteers and yeah, they pretty much covered. I think they said they covered almost every constituency, but I don't think not every polling station, obviously. There's 95,000 polling stations, so the one that will be most accurate, obviously, is the ECT. And then if you follow Vote 62, just to make sure that everything follow along the line, that should be good. And yeah, the rest, you can look at them too, especially on the digital television channel, but all of them basically get their report from the ECT report, which is live online. But once they get it directly, they probably make it faster before the EC upload it on the website. So, find a channel where they update it faster if you really want to know it that fast, or follow the official one. That so far they're doing quite a good job in terms of updating us at this point. Like I said, it might be slow, but it's the most comprehensive at this point.
My question, I wish it was later in the day, because Joel Selway from Thai Data Points could join us, but he's in Salt Lake City, so it's a bit early for him. But he has a really great deep dive into polling on both on Thai Data Points and on Thai Enquirer, so check that out on our website. But can we break down the pollsters as well? Like, who are NIDA and who are some of these government polls, and what biases might they have? Ken, you want to go?
Well, I think that one of the first distinctions that we should make is probably between like the polls with the crazy sample sizes. So we have a bunch of polls, right? That say they polled like 100,000 people, 80,000 people, and if you ever looked at American polling, you're going to know that's a very big sample size. That's going to be very expensive to do, and it leads to all sorts of questions about how they sampled these respondents and whether or not it's actually capturing any of the if it's a truly proper random sample. And so my own bias is I tend to favor the polls with the smaller sample sizes, like NIDA poll. NIDA poll only has maybe 2,000 people respondents per poll, and some people go, well, that's such a small sample size. But actually, that gets me more trusted they're reliable and actually doing an accurate random sample. So that's my own take on polling. Eric, yeah, you want to add anything?
We both know that NIDA is quite. They're not centered. They're not neutral. That's for sure. In terms of what they have, well, a lot of their analysis and lecturers comment have obviously been pro-military. So I mean, can we trust them to find a sample size that is not going to be biased? I mean, yeah, but when you look at it, sometime when you look, even the poll today, NIDA poll showed that in Bangkok, 32 out of 33 goes to MFP.
And this is a conservative poll, and they're even they are showing that.
So there's some way of double checking that, and then there's always never look at one poll or one survey and then just believe it entirely. It's always like look at the sample size. Who are the people answering this question? What question have been answered? I mean, what question have been asked? And what are the options that were given to them in order to answer them? But all of that, obviously, if you have been observing polls before, that you have to double check all of them. But when the result coming from a conservative side, showing that the liberal side is doing well, that should take some mark.
Yeah, and and keep in mind, polls are now. Forget the polls. Now we're waiting for results. And like Eric, now forget the polls. We're done with polls. Now it's results and the official.
You would never believe Super Poll, right? Because it's state run.
Yeah.
That's one thing for sure. That's for me. I'm not
poll.
gonna listen to that. At least I would listen to NIDA.
So like Eric said earlier, just to recap, if you want the official results from the actual election commission, that is ECT dot, what is it?
We just shared it. Just now. Just a second.
What is it though? Just for people who are on Twitter as well.
If you guys are here, it's ectreport.com. Then it would just
ectreport.com. Okay, let's get more interesting stuff. Polling's so boring. We answered the BJT question. Any idea which party will also join Prayut and Move Forward coalition? We kind of we touched on that. Ken and I touched on that earlier. In that, it's not a guarantee that Prayut and Move Forward will be a coalition. There's still a lot of hurdles between the two parties that they have to jump over before they can join together. So it's not set in stone that those two parties will end up forming a government. But if they do form a government, what parties could join them? Ken?
Well, for sure, you know, if it's a Pheu Thai Move Forward coalition, Thai Sang Thai with, you know, maybe five more seats or so, Seri Rom Thai would probably join. Pracha Chat, it's an opposition party mostly focused in the Deep South, I think would be happy to join. Aside from that, with Move Forward, I don't think anything's quite a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that they're very idealistic, but there's going to be a price to pay for that idealism when politics becomes politics, and you have to start making deals, right, in the back room. Do you think that this is a watershed moment in Thai politics? This time around, it feels different with the youth-led protests. Thanks for the great coverage. You're very welcome, first of all. Ken, Eric, do you think this is a big moment, a watershed moment for Thai politics?
Ken first.
Well, I certainly think that regardless of whatever coalition emerges out of the mess of the election results that we have right now, this is going to have an impact on how we think about Thai politics for years to come. First of all, we've seen that, you know, if Move Forward gets the number of seats that we think they're going to get, which is, you know, perhaps very much in the upper estimates of what anybody was expecting, what we're seeing is a new kind of politics that has triumphed over, you know, the local machines, the patronage politics that has dominated so much in the provinces in the past. Because it's clear that by winning so many seats, Move Forward hasn't just won in Bangkok. It's also won in the provinces, perhaps maybe still in the major urban areas, but clearly it's gaining a lot of ground that we didn't think that it would gain quite so early. So I think that in that respect, when people say, oh, in Thai politics, it's always about patronage, it's about upatam, clearly things have been changing. Eric, you want to go next?
Well, yeah, in terms of how the previous election was arranged, you know, all the way until now, and you know, the backbone is always what is the rule we're playing by, and who are the referees, and you know, who are supposed to be the neutral organizations that are taking care and in charge of making sure that everything's fair and justifiable, and there's accountability. In terms of all that, the junta drafted charter should go. It should go, you know, and party that promised to rewrite them, I hope they win. And, you know, and once the rules is fair again, then we can say that we might have some changes.
I mean, it's too early to say if this is a watershed moment or not, right? There's so many things. There's so many things in play right now that can go right or wrong depending on where you stand. Pita has a case against him that might see him disqualified. So, I mean, he might be the prime minister candidate for a few days, but then if he's disqualified, is it too late for MFP to nominate another PM candidate? And if that's the case, then who are they going to vote for? Are they going to abstain? Are they going to vote for Seta? Are they going to vote for someone else? If Pita gets disqualified, does the party get dissolved? You know, there's always technicalities that they can use to go that route. There's a lot of things left that's still uncertain, and we don't even know how well they're doing. Like right now, it's what, 4% now reporting?
8%.
8%.
8%.
Okay, we'll jump into that in 2 seconds. So there's a couple other questions that's easy to answer here. Muhammad asks if it's going to be a unicameral legislation when the Senate is abolished, or did they no longer have the power to? So basically, it's the second part of your question. In the next election, the Senate will no longer have the power to appoint a PM, but it will still be a bicameral legislation. There's still going to be an upper house. I believe under the Constitution, it's still going to be mixed, where there's going to be elected senators and appointed senators still, if I'm not mistaken.
It's going to all be appointed senators still.
Okay.
But this time around, I think they're supposed to be appointed by professional committees, you know, representing different industry professions. So I think it's a different appointment process from what we saw last time under the NCPO. But again, how that's going to happen, I think will very much depend on the next government as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they are the referee as well, right? So
Yeah.
whoever's coming in, if they're fair, then we can change the rules to make it more fair. We can change the referee to make it more fair. So I mean,
But it's
yeah.
also like the reason why this election is so important and why it could be a watershed moment if everyone respects the results of the election is that whoever wins this election is going to redraft the constitution. I think every party has made clear that that's one of their priorities, except for maybe Prayut's party.
And a good party. None of the military said they're gonna touch anything.
Yeah, sure, but the people that will win, the people that will be in charge, said that they will redraft this constitution. So a lot of these questions, it remains to be, it depends on the constitutional drafting committee. What do we need a Senate? Kunparit item from Move Forward says, let's just get rid of a bicameral legislation altogether. Get rid of the Senate. Why not just have one body? I'm not inclined to disagree with him. But we'll see. There's a lot of things. Up in the air in that regard. 8% reporting. Update us, Eric, please.
9%.
9%. All right. Tell us at 9%. What are we looking at?
Well, no, 10%, man. It's 2.8 million.
Wow, that's fast.
So Prayut received 564,000. They're leading in front in the term of constituency with 97 seats, followed by Cao Kai Move Forward and
how many for Cao Kai? How many for Cao Kai?
78
constituencies.
Yeah.
Holy.
But they're counting it, man. They're just counting.
I know. It's early, but 78 is very above expectations.
Well, Prayut got 560,000 right now, and Cao Kai is 448,000. They're not that far away. Bhumjaithai not that far away either. So it's not like it's.
What's BJT?
BJT is 330. So everything is still like there. It's not like somebody is gonna break away anytime soon at 10%.
I mean, if we were in a real democracy, those three parties would form the government, right? But we're not.
We don't know. I'll go for 50 and we'll talk about it.
Okay, next question aimed at Ken. Would MFP, okay, a repeat of the last question, but we can address it again. Would MFP ever join coalition with PT or too many differences? Sort of answered, but we can touch it on it again. And second part of that question is, if Move Forward were in the ruling coalition, would establishment find a way to dissolve them? I'll add my part of that question too, Ken. On what grounds might they get dissolved?
Okay, so the first part is about Prayut and Move Forward, whether or not they can form a coalition, right?
That's correct.
I think that Move Forward is probably going to be happy to join a coalition. The question is more, does Prayut want Move Forward in a coalition? If Prayut doesn't want to upset, the establishment, if Prayut wants to get other coalition partners that don't want to upset the establishment, Move Forward is probably too radioactive for them to have on board. If Prayut wants to persuade the Senate and they want Prayut, Move Forward probably wouldn't want to join a coalition with Prayut because they were very clear. With us, there are no uncles, right? On what was the second point of the question again? Can Move Forward be dissolved?
No, if MFP were in the ruling coalition, would the establishment find a way to dissolve them? And I'm going to add, if they did find a way to dissolve them, on what grounds might they do it? Are there any pending cases where we could see dissolution of Move Forward?
With party dissolutions, I mean, I think that they can, obviously they can happen at any time with any given reason, right? Because we've seen how in the past, prime ministers have been forced out of office on on small technicalities, like Prime Minister Samaksun Thorobet was forced out of office because he accepted money from a cooking show. So I think that if there was a real decision that Move Forward has to go, I wouldn't doubt that a reason could be found to dissolve them. On what exact reason, I don't know. Again, I find it hard to dream up these technicalities, but it's entirely possible, I would say.
Eric?
Well, the current lawsuit against Pita is not going to lead to the dissolution of the party. That's for sure. And I think that's what the question is gearing towards at this point, because that's the most favored one right now. At most, it will actually would disqualify him from running as PM as MP seats, because it would just
I mean,
mean
he would get banned, right?
disqualified.
He would get
Get banned for 10 years if they go for the maximum. But if they found him guilty, but they said already they're not gonna make the ruling, before the election, and today is election, and they're gonna make it like after election, maybe like a week after, if they think that there's enough ground to do so. And even if he's sworn in as an MP already, they can still ask the Constitutional Court to rule on that. So we have to see afterward. I mean, if MFP win big and then Pita become, one of the running favorite candidate to be PM, and then they disqualified him for this technicality of holding a media share that no longer in operation, then it can cook up something later.
That's a good point. Here's a question. I'll take this one. Would Move Forward Party be stronger in the opposition and less compromised? Absolutely. For numerous reasons. If we're being completely political about it, when you go into government, your ratings drop because you actually have to govern. When you're in the opposition, you can criticize without governing, and you can keep your brand and keep your support up by being a good opposition. So there's that to consider. There's also the point that if they were to join any coalition currently, they're going to have to really either drop the 112 demands, or they're going to have to really placate it, dull it, not make it so sharp. And that will really not play well with their base, who find this a really important issue. So if they were to do that, you might, if you're a Move Forward Party leader, you would factor those things into your calculation. If they were to join the government, if you're in the opposition, you can keep your ideals. You can still be as sharp as ever. You wouldn't lose support from the act of governance, which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. And you would continue to be able to stand up. And if you're in the opposition in this next round, that also means that Pheu Thai is now government with one of the military parties, which means that in the next 4 years, when there's no longer a Senate, you really could stand to win this entire thing in a landslide and actually become the sole governing party. So there is that possibility. If MFP were patient, I would say that they wait it out and not jump into a coalition unless the conditions really allowed them to live up to their ideals. Would you guys agree with that?
I would say MFP already turned down the volume in terms of 112 amendment even when they talked to Tawan and Bam on the campaign stage, they said they're not going to push for abolition right away, and then they said it to the activists themselves. So that's already toned down. Number one. Number two is they're also told Pheu Thai they are looking to amend it. They're not going to abolish it. And Pheu Thai said the only thing they said, like, we're not going to look to abolish that law, and any party that looks to abolish that law is not going to be in their coalition. So that's what had been said by both parties.
Ken?
On the point about whether or not they're going to be compromised and, the challenges of governing, I feel like in a way we've already seen a similar thing happen with Cont'd, where, he won with a massive mandate last year. And now I think it's, the truth of the matter is the Bangkok governor doesn't have a magic wand to make his 200 policy pledges become reality. And, I've seen people grumble about, he hasn't accomplished anything in the year that he's been governor. Well, governing is hard, right? And making policy pledges is very much not the same thing as actually following through with them. And, this is not a criticism of Cont'd. This is, he says 3 years in his term. It's too early to say whether or not he's actually done his job. But again, when you're in power, everything's aimed at you.
Next question from Jack. Guys, on the Vote 62 website, it projects Bhumjaithai with 71, Palang Pracharat with 34, and Rwam Thai Sangchart with 37, which would be 142 in total. What's stopping them plus 250 Senate seats to form a government? Quickly to address that, they could pick the PM, but to form a government and govern, the Senate is not in play. So they would be governing with a minority government of 142 out of 500 seats. Not the easiest way to get legislation passed, and usually results in a really quick snap poll in about a year or two. Ken, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, if they tried to form a minority government, they would fall at the first no confidence debate.
Yeah, they might get the PM of choice with the senators, but the senators don't govern. So there's that. Yeah. Next question from I don't know, but I'll pretend I know. Is could Kun Prayut become the next MFP leader? Quote brackets. Hope he is not remotely connected to media shares. Having talked to some,
young, right?
He's very. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. He's not old enough to be PM. He is. I believe he's 28 currently.
You need to be 35.
And you need to be 35. So even in the next election, he could not be prime minister.
No.
He's 30, so
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But even
Well,
then,
yeah.
even then, he can't be prime minister in the next election. And there's a few other people ahead of him in the pecking order in the MFP. Anyways, there's Kun Rome, Kun Wirot, yeah, exactly. So there's a few really strong candidates in that party list ahead of Aitim. Not to say that I'm not very impressed with what Aitim's accomplished in his short time in MFP, but yeah, there's a pecking order, and he's very, very young. Caleb Quinley, an old Thai Enquirer correspondent and a good friend of the network, asks, in comparison to 2019, there seems to be less obstacles thrown against the main opposition parties to subvert the election, in particular MFP. Why does this election feel slightly less deeply flawed? Ken, you take that, and I'll take a stab at it after you.
So why the election feels less deeply flawed?
Yeah, basically he's saying Future Forward got a lot of hurdles thrown their way, and so did Pheu it feels less hurdly this time around.
Well, then number one, this election is actually occurring under a much more democratic environment than last time, right? In 2019, an election was held while the NCPO was still in power, while Prayut was still an absolute ruler, and when the resources of the state could still be channeled towards supporting a military aligned party, and that's not what we're. Oh, I don't know where Eric went, but
Eric will come back.
That's not what we're seeing this time around. This time, Prayut, as it's not a fully democratic system, but it's still a much freer environment, much more open environment than last time. And I think the second thing is that it's hard for the state machinery to be biased towards a government party, even there are so many government parties, right? The Prayut and Prayut split, I think, really meant that there was no establishment consensus on who should be the next prime minister, who should be running the show. And I think that meant a lot of, it was just a much more real, much more genuinely competitive environment this time around.
Eric is back. Do you think, also to just add to that, to Caleb's question, which is a good one, do you think there's a lot of split votes going on with the Conservatives as well? Like, people don't know between, Prayut, Democrats, maybe even Kun Gon's party, where their votes should end up?
So my take would be, I think that we should look at Palang Prachar's votes in 2019. We should segment it a little bit, right? So there's like the real ideological conservatives who voted for Palang Prachat because they wanted a conservative prime minister. They wanted Prime Minister Prayut. I think that vote has ended up with Rwam Thai Sang Chat. But the other half of that, of Palang Prachat's vote wasn't an ideological vote. It was the patronage-driven vote. The vote because Palang Prachat took the local MP from Pheu Thai or from the Democrats, brought it into their own party. These candidates have strong local ties, they have strong local networks, they can mobilize their voters out. Those people voted for Palang Prachat not necessarily because they wanted Prayut, but more because they wanted to vote for a local candidate. And last time it was a one ballot system, so everything ended up with PPRP. I think those votes probably either stayed with Palang Prachat or they went wherever they the PPRP MP went, because some MPs did defect, say, the Bhumjaithai to Prayut. Some of those votes probably went there.
You're also forgetting the stoner vote, which is huge. Sorry, couldn't resist. Next question. Do you think MFP might be too impatient if they joined a coalition and want to bring too much change too soon? For example, military reform or 112. Eric, take this one.
What's the question gonna get? What you say?
Speaking about the stoner vote, do you think the MFP might be too impatient if they join the government and want to bring too much change too soon? For example, the military reform or 112.
Well, one thing on the military side, one thing that Prayut has agreed with move forward is the conscription, the lifting of the mandatory conscription, right? So I think that will, if they win, that would probably go first. What they agreed on the second thing is reducing the size of the military, both in terms of the budget or in terms of the military size. So those things will if they were the government, those would be the two to look forward. In terms of will they move forward, push things too far? I mean, that depends on how many seats they have, right? I mean, if they have many seats, of course, they will be pushing strongly. If they don't, they will be pushing more lightly. So in terms of, a 112 amendment, Prayut said it should be something that be discussed in parliament. They never said, they said that they agree with it. Some of their senior members, like Cont'd, agreed that it should be amended. Right. So so they might be MP on Prayut's side who doesn't want to touch it at all, and there will be MP on Prayut's side that might want to touch it and be willing to work with move forward for it. And the other side is the foreign policy, right? If MFP, if you watch what Pita said today, he said he will go with rule-based world order more than bamboo policy. So I mean,
no one cares about it's the forgotten ministry because it's such a useless ministry. Let's not even give it 10 minutes.
No, but Prayut said they wanted it in order to increase the power of their passport, of the Thai passport, right? And they want to increase more, channel in terms of for market for export. So in terms of diplomacy or negotiation, they would need that ministry. So if Prayut is in charge, they can't say anything anyway. So I think, I don't think Move Forward will push for anything too strongly. And they never said they want to abolish the monarchy. I mean, I don't know how many times they had to say that, but they never said that. So I mean, I don't think they would push things too far.
Okay. Just to add to that, I would say that if they join the coalition, they better get the conditions that they want. I mean, the ministries they're asking for aren't like the most lucrative anyways, right? Like Pita wants foreign policy, foreign ministry, which is like, why would you want that? Because it doesn't do anything. They can't even get us visa-free visits to the States and Europe.
I like the education policies.
Yeah,
and
education.
If they go into education, they should get Ministry of Education. There'll be a lot of change there, which is something I want to see.
Yeah. I think, I mean, here's a good segue. Let's talk about some of our favorite policy pledges from various parties. Doesn't have to be from MFP or PT or it could be from any party. What are some of the good policies that have been suggested by various parties that you found attractive as a voter? I will start. I'll start with MFP. And say that directly elected governors are something that should have been done ages ago, and it's something that should be done now. I think the Ministry of Interior has way too much power, and I think each province should be able to elect their own leader, and then that leader will have instead of reporting to Bangkok, they'll have their constituencies to take care of, which is something that's very important. That's one policy that I found really important. And then the second one is actually from Voronai's party, from Chat Patnakla, who want to free up more capital and make it easier for investments for small and medium-sized businesses, which I think is something sorely lacking, and the liberalization of the Thai economy is long in coming. The areas I don't agree with the MFP are on their more socialist protectionist side. So this is something that I would support. What about you guys?
Ken, go ahead.
Uh, I think that one thing that was I know this is a small issue, but you mentioned Chapatanakla, and I know that Chapatanakla and Prayut, and I think a couple of other parties also suggest this was more funding for creative industries in Thailand, more funding for creative businesses, and I say this because in Thailand we often talk we have the Creative Economy Agency, right, and it's supposed to act as a parallel to in South Korea I forgot what it's called, but it's like their creative content agency. They get a ton of funding. We don't. The CA gets barely any funding. So I think if you really want to support Thailand's soft power, as every government says it does, I think that you really need to put the money where your mouth is. And I think the other issue we talk about would be that I think that was long overdue is the big focus on energy prices and inflation. I mean, it's something that's really been, I mean, it's a big concern for ordinary people all around, right? And I know energy prices has been high all over the world, but the truth is that in Thailand, the fact that I don't think that the Prayut government has been wholehearted in tackling, structural reforms in energy industry, and the fact that it took this election to get a bunch of parties on the debate stage to talk about this issue, I think was very important.
Cool. Eric, anything from you outside of marijuana?
Well, I would go to marijuana later, but let's let's stick with something I like. I think I like both things from MFP and Prayut is the lifting of the mandatory conscriptions. I have a son. My son is 7 years old. So I mean, from the look of the record that of the people they have been training and the outcome of it, and the potential of losing years of his life, I would say, yeah, I agree with the abolition of the military conscriptions on that part. On the second part, Bhumjaithai, but not the marijuana policy. Bhumjaithai in terms of the rooftop policy, which I really want to see that happen.
That's not gonna happen.
I want to see it happen.
Just to tell everyone
who's
just to recap for everyone who's watching, Bhumjaithai, who put lap tam, say that they want to put a solar roof on every household in Thailand, which is just not maybe in Buriram, but it ain't happening everywhere else. So yeah, it's
not a bad policy.
It's not a bad thought. It ain't gonna happen.
Nah, but other party can do it too. Sure. If Bhumjaithai is in there with MFP and Prayut, they could adopt it to something else, can they?
Let's just say a shift towards renewables is a necessary step that we should embrace sooner rather than later. But a solar roof on every household is a far-fetched dream.
I want it. I want to see it happen.
Okay. And weed. You want to talk about weed briefly?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in terms of that, I mean, one thing that Prayut and all the True Wit have been attacking them about is like crime rising and then kids gaining more access to marijuana. Yes, they can, but those shops already impose their own regulation. Bangkok already come up with their own regulations, all of that. And if you look at the crime statistic, nothing much have changed since the decriminalizations until now. So I mean, if the Bhumjaithai would somehow put a shutdown on everything else beside medical marijuana, then it would shape out into something that they would have to talk to a lot of businesses that have already opened at this point.
Yeah, that's a major thing, right? There's been thousands of businesses that have registered. Who?
So how are you
gonna shut that down? You can't. The genie's been let out of the lamp. It's gone.
So I mean, once I want to have regulation to control so that children do not get their hand on it. Like I said, I have a son. I don't want him to get anywhere near it. If when he grow up, he have a choice. Until he does have a choice and he grow up enough, then he can take it, like like cigarette or alcohol. But I mean, it should be a choice in terms of that. Same thing like vaping cigarette. That should be a choice. That should no longer be illegal.
Anyway, I'm gonna. I do have a controversial opinion before we jump into the next. I don't think conscription is the terrible thing. I think, I think national service has its merits. I look to countries like South Korea, Israel, who obviously have a much more urgent military threat upon their doorsteps than we do. But Korea has a really good model. Taiwan has a really good model where you can choose national service. It doesn't have to be with the military, but you spend a year or two of your life with the fire service, with the police force, with emergency rescue services, and it does instill something in the national character. And I feel like we're becoming softer and softer.
Well,
so
if they are anything like that in Thailand, then I would agree with. But if you become a servant in a general house,
yes,
no.
I'm saying conscription as it is not. In Thailand, it's corrupt and it's not great. But in terms of national service, I think there is an argument to be had for it, which is probably more right wing as I'll ever go.
My brother is in the military. He's in the South. I mean, he was in this tour in the South 3 times. Right now, he's patrolling the border in Tak, where the Myanmar war is happening right next door. So I mean, I'm all for soldiers. I want them to have more welfare. I want them to be better.
We're for foot soldiers and everyday soldiers. We're not for the generals. Let's say that.
Exactly.
Okay. Next question. Do you see a scenario, Ken, in which Anutin becomes prime minister? Honestly, Bhumjaithai will definitely be strongest from the current coalition parties with around 80 MPs. Do you see Anutin becoming PM?
I could see Anutin in government. Do I see him as PM? Well, if the backroom dealing leads somehow to, a reformulation of the current government, I think Anutin would be PM simply because he would have the most seats. But that's probably going to have to be a minority government, right? And that government would fall pretty quickly. So if he does become PM, probably not a very long-lived one.
Fair enough. Poor Kunu. Next question. Did Prayut and Prayut genuinely fall out, or is it a tactic? I think that having heard what I heard, there is genuinely a rift between the two, especially in terms of some of the people underneath Prayut who just did not get along with Prayut. People like Kunthamanat and his faction. There's also the people that left government, like what's that was Dad's name? I forget his name again. Economic czar Kun Somkit,
yeah,
who genuinely had trouble seeing eye to eye with the factions. So there is a rift. But if push comes to shove, and Bhumjaithai and move together, and that's something, then the two of them will get back together. The rift is not, that far apart where they can't be bridged by a common enemy, I would say. Next question. Had PT and MFP form the coalition government, is it possible for MFP getting interior and defense portfolios, as these are influential portfolios? Do you have any idea in which ministries MFP might get? I know MFP want foreign. I know they want culture. Oh, no, sorry. They want education and foreign. Those are their two big ones. If MFP gets defense, I guarantee a coup real quickly. It's just not gonna happen. PT will get defense, I think, in that case.
Definitely PT. If they get to form a government, PT will be the one controlling defense. They know what they have to control.
Yeah, interior and defense are huge, and PT will want to hold on to them. Unless there's just no other choice, but they're going to get them, I think. Next question. Will ganja survive? Eric, hope so. I don't know and don't really care because I don't smoke. Thanks for the coverage. Can you help explain the discrepancies between party lists and constituency voters? E.g., PPRP getting 10% of constituency votes versus 1% of party list votes. I'm per the ECT results so far. It's very early, so I wouldn't put too much heed into those numbers just yet. I mean, will there be a lot of discrepancy between constituency and party list? I think they'll be roughly the same, right? Like they'll get, yeah.
For PPRP, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of discrepancy between the party list and the constituency vote. When I was doing some, pre-work up in the north, and I talked to a couple of voters. They said they were going to vote for their local Palang Pracharat MP because he's been a long time MP. He's been in the local area for years, but they said that they're not going to vote for Palang Pracharat on the party list because that's a vote for Luang Pom as prime minister, and that's not necessarily what they were looking for. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a big discrepancy. Although 10% and 1% sounds like a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of those upper northeast votes are going with the Tamanat faction of PPRP, right? That's what he brings to that coalition. Something's wrong with Cont'd's microphone. The volume when he speaks goes up and down a lot. Apologies. I will try to keep my mouth pointed at my microphone so that I'm not fidgeting too much. It's my ADHD. Next question. It seems as though PPRP is clean sweeping Payao and Phetchabun, but the party list votes from those provinces are dominated by Move Forward Party and PT. Why is that? I think Ken just explained it really well. A lot of those, both Payao and Phetchabun are very strong Tamanat provinces in that faction. So they're going to vote for their local patronage network and their local MP who's sort of been their MP forever. But then in terms of party lists, I don't think they're beholden to that party. They're just beholden to that person. So they'll vote their conscience on the party list, and that's probably going to be MFP and PT. Next question, Max asks, whoever's in the next government, what are the main issues you would like to see them tackle in their first term? Eric, you can jump.
First term.
Well, basically, what issues do you want to see them tackle?
Economic issue. I mean, that's definitely highest household debt in terms of bringing back tourism recovery. That in terms of sustainability. Also tackle the electricity price issues. I mean, like I said, that's why I hope that we move forward to renewable as fast as possible. I mean, and if we can, if not, then yeah. I mean, electricity bills, lowering living costs, all of that should be done within the first 6 months, at least to a year, in order for them to advance, and then to the voters that vote for Prayut want to see that. In terms of structural reforms, that can come, but it can start right away as well. Hopefully, they can start with the reformation of the police and the military. Make sure to get rid of all those ranking issues, promotion, corruptions within all of that, and and all again, educations. I'm passionate about educations, and then the faster we can in terms of upgrading that, making sure that teachers, are better paid, and then they're not too preoccupied with, other stuff instead of just teaching. So I want to see that. I really want to see education be upgraded, and I really want to see them urgently doing it instead of like Prachatipat, which have been saying it for the past decades and nothing has been done. Yes, we have free educations, but we need a better quality free education at this point.
Ken, you go, and then I'll go last.
I completely agree with Eric on education reform. I'll also add other structural economic reforms that ensures Thailand's more competitive in the future. We saw during COVID what happened when your only economic engine is tourism, right? You don't put all your eggs in one basket, and our labor is now more expensive. Our manufacturing is not as competitive as before. What are the new economic engines that's going to drive Thailand? Under the Prayut government, we saw, initiatives like the EEC. Whether or not the next government's going to continue to do that is their prerogative. But we really need to see more long-term economic planning that will truly, increase Thailand's capacity to compete with other countries and make it a more innovative economy as well.
Agree with everything you guys have said. I mean, education is such a broad topic. It's hard to know where to start, and I think that's some of the problems. For me, I think the most pressing thing is I wouldn't even say the reform, but the wholesale change needed with independent bodies, starting with the election commission, starting with the Constitutional Court, things like that, I think urgently needs to be addressed in the next constitution. So I would say all of that falls within constitutional redrafting, and I think that needs to be priority. The other thing I would say also with Eric's point is with education and police reform, it begins with pay for the lowest rung of that. Like it begins with teachers' pay and policemen's pay. If you can increase that, that goes a long way to solving some of the issues. And then it's a question of reforming the leadership, changing the mindset, changing the way they're recruited, promoted, getting rid of the patronage networks in both ministries. And then going from there. So that's where I would go with that. Next question. Question from Kun Tanyakon. Pita answered the US-China question sounding like Tony Blinken, using terms like rule-based international order, and the phrase cart policy, not buffet, referring to IPEF. He also dismisses bamboo policy as staying silent, which I agree in view of Prayut's foreign policy. But bamboo policy is much more sophisticated than that in the past. How do you think we should approach our foreign policy? Ken, is bamboo policy something that we should continue, or should we subscribe to this quote-unquote rule-based international order?
So my thing with bamboo policy, right, is it a truly strategic bamboo policy, or is it, an autopilot bamboo policy? So when we talk about bamboo policy, we think of Thailand, balancing between great powers. And if you're doing it because it serves Thailand's interests best, and there's a strategic and calculated move about why Thailand's balancing the way it is, I guess I don't have too much of a problem with bamboo policy. I have a problem with bamboo policy if it's there because if the foreign minister doesn't have the imagination to carry out, a more strategic orientation of where Thailand is and what Thailand's place in the world should be. And sometimes I think it's hard to tell about what kind of bamboo policy we're following.
Okay, I adjusted my mic and it went mute. Okay, hopefully this fixes the issue. Guys, I think our bamboo policy for the last 6-7 years swung one way just because of how the international reaction from Western countries was after the coup. So the Prayut government and Cont'd, Prayut needed allies, so they swang towards the east, towards Beijing, towards Moscow, and now it'll swing back. I don't think our foreign policy has ever been that terrible. I don't think I think we could be a lot more assertive in our own sphere, especially in Southeast Asia. I think the MFA have not been as strong as they should be when dealing with ASEAN issues. But in terms of balancing the world's power, I don't think bamboo policy is a terrible thing, like Ken said. We don't want to jump onto the US's side. We don't want to jump into China's side. We just want to stay the course and really take care of business within our region. In terms of confronting the Myanmar regime, in terms of facilitating better trade within the region, in terms of making sure that ASEAN functions as economic bloc rather than competing small powers, is my opinion. Eric, did the EC already comment on Phrait's 10,000 baht handout, or is that still hanging over them?
They are still checking on it. The last time I heard, they have published all the one that they were having concern about when they asked all the political parties to explain their policies, which they have submitted to the EC. The EC have already published all of that. So, but so far there's still no following up on that. But in terms of if they're gonna pick out that card sometime or another in order to dissolve the party for vote selling or buying, we don't know. At this point, we're waiting for the EC after they finish the election. And the EC just give us another surprise. The ECT report website is now down.
Maybe it's down just because so many people are clicking on it.
I hope that is the case.
All right. Jan, I hope I'm saying your name right, and it's not Jan. Jan Vesley asks, which parties of the biggest six, MFP, PT, BJT, UTN, PP, and Democrats, support same-sex marriage, and which do not? Do you see this is going to happen in Thailand anytime soon? Ken, you want to go?
So in the last parliament, we got an answer to that in the sense that I think that Move Forward and Pheu Thai supported a a marriage equality bill, while the coalition parties mostly supported a civil partnerships bill. So both favored some sort of change in terms of how same-sex couples can be legally recognized by the state, but not to the same extent. If I'm not incorrect, I think that the Democrats went further and said they're okay with marriage equality, but I don't think the marriage equality bill got most of the government MPs' votes.
I think the Democrat is going with the civil
Okay.
partnership bill.
No,
Okay.
so what the Democrats said is that they're not going to use this as a whip measure, and that the MPs under their banner can vote their conscience. So you got people, because the Democrats, if you remember correctly, there's a lot of people from Bangkok in this last government who will vote probably yes for marriage equality, and then there's a lot of people from the South where the religious factors come into it more, so they're going to vote more towards civil union or nothing altogether. So the Democrats are quite split in that, so they didn't whip that motion, which is fine. Asked, did you all vote today? Well, I certainly did. I know Ken did. Fun fact, Eric cannot. Eric cannot because he's not Thai.
American, man.
Eric's American, but
Never
his
lived
mom
there.
Eric's American by way of Germany, but his mom is Thai, and
Yes.
through some quirk, he's now applying for Thai citizenship, even though it should have been birthright citizenship for him. But he's legally in Thailand because he has a Thai wife, who is Jess, who is awesome, and thank you for all the support Jess has given Thai Enquirer over the years. Without her, Eric would have died ages ago. Will we see more street protests if any judicial or military shenanigans to ensure PT or MFP are locked out of elected power? Oh, so will we see if there are? Okay, so they're asking if there's going to be street protests if there's some shenanigans that dissolve or disqualify PT or MFP. God, yes.
Yes.
Oh God, like you've never seen before.
Pita have commented on this issue. He said if there's a coup, if there's any that sort, then they will be right in front of the government house, and he will be there. So,
and Thai Enquirer will be there, and myself will be there on my own personal, and Eric will be there.
we will be there to report.
Eric will be there to report. I will be there to protest because I am not technically in Thai Enquirer anymore. Ken has to leave in a bit, and I do too. But let's any final questions before we head out, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on the stream. It's been really fun. We're gonna post this live video up after and then share it around. So thank you for the questions. They really help facilitate the discussion today. So some final questions, throw it in the chat, and then we'll go from there. Kun Tanyagon asks, is Thaksin a realist? Thaksin was known to criticize Zelensky, so I think he's a realist. Is Thaksin a realist? Okay, those are two separate things. I'm not going to touch the Zelensky thing just because this is a Thai election discussion, and Ukraine would be superfluous to that. Is Thaksin a realist? I would say Thaksin's a realist for the most part, but he desperately wants to come home, and when you desperately want something, you tend to compromise a lot of things to get that something. Watershed asks if Pheu Thai and Move Forward were able to form a coalition, a very big if, yes. How might they manage the weed issue? Don't think it's popular possible to bring it back to 100% illegal. Actually, they're very different on this, if I'm not mistaken, right, Eric? MFP and PT don't see eye to eye on weed.
No. Pheu Thai basically said medical only. Pita flipped over after Shuit asked him on stage. He said before that he would support recreational marijuana use, and then he said on stage, flipped over after the wave of the public. Well, Shuit made it look like that way, but let's just say he's now backing down to medical marijuana only. So yeah, well, like I said, like Cont'd said as well, if there's a lot of SMEs and a lot of people who have already opened shops, so how are they gonna deal with that? And maybe they put on some regulation where you have to ask for medical certificate from doctors, and that would just be like what happened in Los Angeles when it started all this medical marijuana recreational use stuff.
So I just have to pay 100 baht at a clinic to ask a doctor to give me a certificate. I don't smoke weed. I don't care. You do. I think this is good. Ken, any last thoughts before we head off into the ether?
Well, my last thought is right now it's 9 p.m. and I think that the Electoral Commission initially said that they were hoping to do unofficial results by 10 p.m.
Yeah,
Right now on the
20%.
website it says 14% reporting, so I don't think we're going to get there tonight. But it'll be an interesting night to watch.
Eric, any last thoughts?
No, well, I would still be here in front of Twitter, so you guys please keep on following. So we'll keep you guys updated.
Eric's gonna man the Twitter beacons all night. My last thought is that we do not exist without you guys. So thank you everyone for supporting Thai Enquirer. Well, I'm just a friend of TE now, but Eric and the team and myself when I was there were really appreciative of all the support we got from you guys. So thank you so much for your support. Keep supporting us, share our articles, and it's because of you that we've been successful, and hopefully this year we get even bigger and we can bring you more and better coverage. And also thank you to people like Ken who correspond from time to time and write amazing, excellent articles for us. So thank you for that. Eric, before we sign off, want to give us an update with 10% reporting?
20%.
20%?
Yeah, well,
Which website?
Which website?
ECT is back online now. Like I said, it was down and go.
Okay, all right. Give us 20% reporting. How many votes is that? I can't do math.
Well, right now, Prayut is at 1.3 million. They got 99 on the constituency. Gaogai is followed at 90 seats. Bhumjaithai at 60 and Palang Pracharat at
can we get the total
38.
votes as well so far for each? So start with Prayut.
Prayut total vote 1.3 million, 99 seats. Move forward 1.1 million, 90 seats. Bhumjaithai 700,060, 60 seats. And Palang Pracharat 650 at 38 seats.
Okay, so if the projection is Prayut gets how many seats?
Well, we think they're gonna get. But the projection put them between 230 to 250.
That's above their internal party poll. And MFP?
I have to double check on that, but put them ahead at 100 something.
So wow, that's because Ken and I were chatting before this election, and we were saying, do you think they'll even get 100? And if they get above 100, that's
At 20%, they might.
That's well above expectations, so that's amazing. And Bhumjaithai, we'll see what they do. They're doing much better than expected as well. So it is what it is. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Khop Khun Khap. And continue to follow Thai Enquirer. We've got some great articles coming up this week about this election. Once we find out the results. Ken's promised to write something really cool, so waiting for that. and we'll be manning our Twitter and Instagram for the rest of the night. So let us know your thoughts there, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
On Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son? And where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled on the side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I crawled on 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 side forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain you're gonna fall. Oh, what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my darling young one? I saw a newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. I saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers a-bleeding. I saw a white ladder all covered with water. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, and it's a hard rain they're gonna fall. What did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my darling young one? I heard the sound of a thunder that roared out a warning. I heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. I heard 100 drummers whose hands were ablazing. I heard 10,000 whispering and nobody listening. I heard one person starve, I heard many people laughing. I heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. I heard the sound of a clown who cried in the alley. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rains are gonna fall. Oh, what did you meet, my blue-eyed son? And who did you meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man